Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to this ARWO Liquid Knowledge webinar. So, quick question. Can you imagine the FBI shows up in your lobby one day to tell you you've been hacked? It's got to be every water utility's worst nightmare. But for our speaker today, Dave Ketchen is the Assistant General Manager of Littleton Electric, Light, and Water Departments, about 45 minutes or so outside of Boston. This was a nightmare scenario that really came true for them. So, Dave, welcome and thank you for agreeing to share your experience with ARWO. We're so happy that you are here with us today. Let's see. So, got a hand. Hold on. Mhm. Hold on. We've got some technical difficulties here. Oh, we're okay. Okay. Sorry, I had someone telling me I was muted, so my apologies for that. Um, so at any rate, so Dave, thanks for being here. Such an incredible story. It's so incredible, in fact, that it was told by 60 Minutes and some others, and we have provided some resources for our attendees. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a resources tab, and that would be a lot of things that you can download and see the 60 Minutes presentation, see an article by Info Security Magazine, and a really excellent white paper from Littleton. Before we get started in earnest here, I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you all for being here, first of all. And as you might have seen, this session is being recorded. Your mics are in mute. We'll use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to have question and answer period at the end. So log them as you have them. And we do have a sponsor today, and that is CoBank. We want to thank CoBank for its support of these webinars. It's an important partner to ARWO, and I know it is to many of you as well. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with ARWO, um, ARWO is the voice and knowledge exchange of regional water and wastewater organizations. And it's the only organization that is focused exclusively on regional water. And we're building a community to advance the interests of regional water organizations. And we'd love it if you joined us. Right now, you can get 3 free months when you join ARWO, and we would love to have you do that. Scan the QR code, drop your info in the form, and we will get a hold of you, or you can reach out directly to Al Rickard, my colleague. Um, One more thing right now, we are working on the summit is coming up, and we are doing a really interesting event this year. Um, it's going to be March 24th at Davidson Water in Lexington, North Carolina. And for those of you who are going to be at the Utility Management Conference in Charlotte, which is nearby, we're going to have transportation from Charlotte to Lexington for this 1 day event. You can scan the QR code, see the sessions, but we have a bunch of really good sessions on broadly technology, leadership, HR, and all of it from a regional water perspective, and of course, great networking. So, having said all of that, which I know is a lot, I'm going to hand it over to Dave and allow him to um, take controls and run his slides. Dave, are you there? We may have lost him.
All right.
Okay, we are back, and here's Dave.
Thanks, Gina. Sorry about the technical difficulties there.
That's okay.
I will share my screen right now. Can you see that okay, Gina? Can you see that, Gina?
Ah, yes, you can. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
All right. Thank you.
No.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining today, and I'm very excited to be presenting on this topic of a direct experience that we went through as a utility, and we're in a unique position where we're able to share this information with a lot of other people, um, and hopefully you guys can take something away from this. So a quick introduction. So on the left here, you sort of have all the different companies, agencies, utilities involved. And then on the right, you have the adversary, which is the People's Republic of China. And so we're basically going to break down how each of these companies on the left played a role in helping secure our network back and mitigating the issue. So jumping right into it. So a little bit of a background for our company. Um, we're the Littleton Electric Light and Water Departments. We're located in Littleton, Massachusetts, which is north central Massachusetts and just about an hour outside Boston. There's a population of over just 10,000 people here. LELWD is the acronym that we go by. So we were formed in 1912. We actually formed as a electric and a water department together. So a little bit of a odd pairing there, but it's really worked well for our company for the past 100 years. We service electric, water, and wastewater to our communities in Littleton and then one other surrounding town in Boxborough. Um, through we're run through an elected board of commissioners, and our customer count is listed right there. We have about 8,000 electric customers, 3,500 water customers, and about 100 wastewater customers for a brand new wastewater system that we're actually standing up right now. So I've been with the company for just over 10 years now. I started on the electric side as an electrical engineer, worked as an engineer for a few years, and then a position in management opened up. So now I'm the assistant general manager. So I oversee both sides of the utility, electric and water, um, as the assistant general manager. So that's a little bit of background on me. So getting into a little bit of the history on our network. So in the early 2010s, so about 15 years ago, we had an internal IT team who sort of had a vision for our small town, small utility. So their goal was to bring high-speed networks that were combined to as many town buildings as possible through a municipal fiber ring. And they wanted to use our department as the head end because that's where they were out of. Uh, I would say our department has a lot of resources that maybe the town didn't necessarily have at that time. Um, and then they wanted to build a redundancy in this ring within this ring. So they wanted sort of a backup head end as well. So our department served as the head end, and then there was a loop municipal fiber ring, and the police department, which is sort of on the northern side of Littleton, served as the backup head end. So essentially, this fiber ring connected every town building. Everything was on the same network. Nothing was segmented. Things that would sort of make you cringe today, just based on the cyber landscape and how things are done. So about 5 years into that project, and once it was rocking and rolling, we we you know decided to go in another direction. Management at the time, just through education and other political cyber events that had happened, had determined that sharing a network with the entire town wasn't a great idea, even if it was segmented in into pieces, which ours was. And to do that, to complete that project was sort of above the capabilities of our internal IT team. So in 2015, our company decided to hire a managed service provider, and with the goal of sort of untying everything that we've done for the past 5 years and really just getting LELWD segmented on its own and building its own network that way. So that's a little bit of the history there. Um, Now let's jump forward to when this event happened in 2023. So looking at the years between 2015 and 2023, we thought we were in really good standing. We had this MSP was, fully integrated onto our network. They were managing all of our licenses, our patches, firewalls, VPN installations and management. And we were under the understanding that our electric and water SCADA systems that operate our systems were completely air gapped and not reachable from any adversary on the outside. We also did typical trainings for our employees using KnowBe4, which I'm sure people are familiar with, but we had phishing emails, spoofing phishing emails that would get sent out to employees, and you'd be able to see who clicked and who didn't click. And then we would just do quarterly training videos through that software, which worked really well. We also, through some connections on the power side, through the American Public Power Association, in 2022, 2023, we were awarded a grant to install some operational technology devices on our network that would monitor traffic on all of our OT devices. So any any cyber infrastructure that was more, in our field, in our substations, in our water treatment plants, in our pump houses, anything like that that needed switches or any type of networking infrastructure. This company, Dragos, we hired them to sort of have eyes on all of the traffic on that. So that's just a little more background on our company. And I guess let's get right into it. So just rip the Band-Aid off. So there was one Friday in November of 2023 where the FBI had reached out to an LELWD employee who was working under me, and that FBI agent told or asked the employee who he could get in contact with to talk about our IT network. So the employee gave that agent my number and called me right after saying, "Hey, you're going to get a call from the FBI, and I don't know what it's about." So right away, that agent called me, and my guard was kind of up just from doing past trainings on cybersecurity and spoofing and everything like that. So the agent called me, and he had told me that our system had been hacked, and it was a part of this large Chinese state-funded effort to hack into different you know utilities and different sectors throughout the United States. And they had been on our network. And so basically he told me that they're still actively on our network, and he needed my personal email address so that he could send me a link to more information for things that we could search for on our network to I guess give them some assurance that this traffic was actually on our network. So now all of my flags are raised, and I'm thinking there's no way this is a real call. So I asked this agent, or I gave this agent my personal email address, with the thought in mind, like I'm not clicking on this link or anything that he sends me. So we hang up the phone. He ends up sending me an email with more information on this Volt Typhoon, I guess this briefing that he provided through this email, and with a link, like I said, that gave more indicators of things we could search for to see if we were actually being hacked or not. And so after that happened, I got on the phone, called our general manager Nick Lawler, and so now I kind of clued him in on what was going on, and we had a discussion about the legitimacy of this call, and he told me to call back that's Boston FBI office that he said he was out of, and asked for that agent. So I did that, and the agent picked up again. So I verified that it was all real, and he's like, "Oh, what are you calling about?" Like, and I just explained that I was just doing my due diligence to ensure that this was a real call. And I said, this is really outside of my what my skill level is, and I think as a utility, we'd really like a larger explanation from you guys on what's going on. And he said, okay, can we come Monday? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So on Monday, they were scheduled to come Monday afternoon to our office to kind of give us a more in-depth briefing. And going through the weekend, you kind of like, it was in the back of your head, like, what could this be? How bad could it really be? And just all the different scenarios are going through your mind of, how is this going to play out? And then Monday finally comes, and again, it's kind of like questioning the legitimacy of what's happening, until a couple FBI agents and a CISA agent showed up in our lobby, in their suits, and and ended up giving myself and Nick Lawler and another employee sort of a briefing of what was going on. And they really laid it out for us of, hey, you guys are actively being being monitored by China, essentially. This is how it happened. And I'll get into the incident timeline, I guess, right now. So they came and said that our firewall from Fortinet had a software update or a firmware update that was supposed to be performed in December of 2022 from a zero-day vulnerability. And they said that our firewalls never received that update, and China was able to find a backdoor through that firewall. With that being said, Microsoft was actually the company that found this this traffic. So there's traffic going back between our our utility networks and China. So Microsoft was they have their own threat hunting team, and they were just doing their own due diligence on different systems, and they saw this traffic, and they tried to alert our managed service provider that, hey, you've got this traffic on your network, you might want to take a look at this. So they sent an email to our managed service provider, and our managed service provider never even got back to Microsoft on it. They never informed us as a company about the email, and I think that's because they never saw it themselves. But as the account holder for our Microsoft account at that time, this was an official Microsoft email to them. Um, so at that point, Microsoft, after a couple weeks of trying to reach our managed service provider with to no avail, they ended up reaching out to the FBI Houston office, which is which was the local office to their threat hunting team. And the Houston office ended up pinging the Boston office. And the FBI and Homeland Security were fully aware of, this Volt Typhoon um, effort by China. So they knew the seriousness of it, and they when they were in our office, basically they said they wanted us to work with them because we were one of the only cases that they knew of where China was still actively on our network, and no patches had been completed yet. And so, like this slide says December 12th, 2022. That's when the patch was first announced and released. And here they are in our office in November of 2023, and our firewall still hadn't been patched by our managed service provider, which is pretty alarming, obviously. So they said, "Hey, we want to use you guys as sort of the guinea pig as bait to see what China is trying to take, what information they're trying to gain. They want to understand better how they're moving on our network, and everything like that." So like I said, the FBI was with Homeland Security in our conference room that day, and the FBI wanted to hand it over to the CISA team to work with us in this effort, and the FBI kind of wanted to take a back seat since they operate under different realms essentially. So we agreed to that, and well, pending a conversation with our board about it, we were under the assumption that, hey, it can't get much worse than this, but whatever we can do to help the nation to figure out what is going on here, the more that we can provide, the better. So we gave them the green light, and basically immediately, and well, so I'll follow up actually. So the other thing that they mentioned again was, since they're still actively on your network, one, we don't want you telling the public that this is happening. We don't want to raise any flags to them. So we just want to keep everything as it is. Everything needs to be out of band, is what they call it. So off of our main network. So that's why they wanted us to use our personal email addresses with them. So once we kind of came to an understanding of, hey, that's all that that's doing. That was easy to work with. And so right away, once we agreed to that, they CISA had a full threat hunting team, and we were basically just emailing back and forth right away with, first they needed our signed permission. So we had to go back and forth with our lawyers and everything like that to ensure that the data that we were allowing them to see was protected to us, and just make sure everything's okay before really diving in. But what they wanted to do was install sensors at the front of our network where they could see everything that China was doing at the time, and they could search the cause and what China has touched so far. They basically could do a full search of, or a full analysis of our network, and give us a lot of information that we really needed to help mitigate the issue. So we agreed to do that, and they kind of told us, hey, we'd like to have these sensors on your network, for at least a few weeks, just to kind of see what they're doing, and that will give us time to create our mitigation plan without tipping off China. So we were trying to work as covertly as possible. Now, getting back to this incident timeline. So like I said, our managed service provider dropped the ball on this December 12th patch. So December 12th, Fortinet sends an email to our managed service provider saying, hey, you need to make this patch immediately. And over the years, our managed service provider really grew, and our relationship sort of had been going down had been negatively impacted by their growth. So where we started at 2015, they were one size company. We had a full team of people that we really trusted and could work with. And then, 4 or 5 years after that, they had just acquired so many other smaller companies that a lot of members from our original team had either gotten promoted or left the company. So now we're dealing with, second and third and fourth sort of string options for people managing our network. And they just got so big that any projects that we were doing with them, they couldn't um, they just couldn't handle. And I'll get more into that later, but that is sort of uh, leading into this December 12th patch that needed to be made. So they get this for all of their customers with Fortinets, and they send an email out to all of their customers saying, "Hey, we're working on a strategy to issue this patch to all our customers. We'll be in touch once we have a plan." And that patch didn't end up happening, obviously, for months. But what SIS was able to tell us was January 10th. So just about a month after that is when the threat actor first gained access to our network. So they were able to exploit the FortiGate vulnerability by compromising some credentials and gaining access to our VPN system and basically having free reign on our network to move how they wanted to. So what China wanted to do throughout this whole I guess Volt Typhoon was live off the land. So they wanted to really gain access to your system without you knowing. So they wanted to just act as if they were a regular user and not tip you off that they were on your network. Their goal wasn't to get a quick payment. Their goal was more to infiltrate, get as much information as they can, and just sit on your network for as long as they can for whatever reason they have. So at this point, so they're on our network. They compromised our credentials. Our managed service provider had not detected any adversary on our network. Between January and that November meeting with the FBI, like I said, the threat actor was living off the land. Um, and in June of that summer is when Microsoft actually saw the traffic from from our network um, to China. So essentially, they would use different VPN uh, locations and sort of remote into different locations around the world. So our network would ping, Minnesota, then somewhere in Texas, and then it would go to, you know, Russia, and then somehow get back to China. They have a full scheme of just ways to convolute the actual communication path to hide their tracks. So between January and November, they were on our network, but they would come on once every few weeks. So that first January 10th day, they just gained access to our network, and they kind of jumped right off. And then maybe a week later, they came back on using those same credentials, and then now they're on our file server and exploring around different things on our file server. And then they went off for another month or two. Then they come back on, and then at some point, I believe in like March or April, they actually created their own folder directory on our file server that was just hidden behind so many different other folders that no one would have noticed it, but they were using that directory to basically transfer files back to them. So any files that they deemed necessary to take, they would take. And CISA was able to give us a full fingerprint list of everything that they touched, everywhere they went, and everything that they took. So um, that's sort of how we know all this information. And then I already talked about that November 17th call from the FBI. So at this point, Microsoft had tried reaching out to our managed service provider a few times and then ended up reaching out to the FBI. Um, Once that happened, well, I guess I'll go back to this one. So also in August of 2023, like I said, we had that Dragos grant where they installed the OT sensors on our network. Those didn't end up coming online until August of 2023, just based on the timeline of that project. So by the time they were online, anytime China was on our network, um, they just saw it as like normal activity. So it didn't raise a red flag. So they kind of see what your normal activity is, get a baseline, and then use that information to detect any traffic that doesn't look legitimate.
Hey Dave, this is Gina. Your mic is just a little bit garbled. If you can give it a thump or maybe slide your chair a little closer. I don't know if that'll help, but
Is this any better?
that is better. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay,
These
so
these things happen. That's how you know we're really live.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Gina. So after about so SZA came on to our network in mid-November, and um, when they ended up shipping us the sensors to install on our network, they sent a you know pretty simple sheet of directions on how to install those sensors onto our network. We ended up trying to install the sensors on our network, but some of the information that they gave us just didn't allow the sensors to communicate properly. So we were troubleshooting that with SZA one day, and this just speaks to how great the SZA threat hunting team was. So we ended up spending a full Thursday um, trying to go back and forth with them and troubleshoot. And by the time we got to Thursday afternoon, it became clear that we weren't going to be able to have the sensors online by the end of that day. And SZA was like, you know what? We're just going to come out to your office tomorrow. We'll get this all situated and we'll be good to go. So I said, okay, just give me a call when you guys are here. We work Monday through Thursday, 10-hour days, and so Friday is typically off. But I was in the office that Friday, and I figured they'd be flying in from DC, and they ended up driving from DC all the way to Littleton, Massachusetts overnight. And so they basically left, that meeting that we had Thursday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Went home, packed, and hopped right in, and they were driving an electric car, so they also had to stop halfway to charge, which also took a few hours. So they ended up getting to a hotel lobby, I think about like 5 a.m. the next morning, that Friday morning, and then sleeping on the couch in the lobby for an hour or two, and then they were at our office by 7:30 that Friday morning. So that just kind of I just wanted to share that story to give them their kudos because they went above and beyond. So by the time they got here that morning, um, they worked on installing the sensors most of the morning and were successful in doing so. And then, so after they installed the sensors, we sort of showed them around on our network and sort of described even more in depth on how everything was set up, and gave them a lot of insight that they utilized to help find out what had happened and you know find out what risk we had moving forward. So they took all of that information back to their team, and actually, like while they were there, China was jumped back onto our network, so they were active on our network that same week. So a few weeks go by, and their threat team had come to a consensus that, if China really wanted to, there's a way that they could have gotten on either our electric or water SCADAs or SCADA networks, and had they known what they were doing, they physically, could have done damage to our system. So it was at that point that we decided that we had to move forward with the mitigation and get China off of our network. And we had been talking about mitigation during that entire month and what we had to do. But by the time the day come, this December 15th, we really had a great game plan on what to do, and they were pretty certain that this was going to get China off of our network without leaving back doors. So basically, we did a sort of a walkthrough of this because we wanted to, stay as covert as possible before starting the mitigation, because step one was disabling internet access for the entire environment. So once that happens, if China was on our network at that time, obviously a red flag would have come up, and they could have seen that, we were making mitigations. So step one was to disable the internet access, and then we worked through, you know, this is sort of a short list, but we worked through a full list of mitigations that day. Made sure to test everything. Made sure, um, you know, old domain accounts were taken away. We reset all, domain passwords, things like that. Um, and then every mitigation that we ended up making, we tested, we verified, and at the end of the day, once we were ready, we ended up re-enabling our internet access with all of these new changes, and without giving China, a window to get back onto our network. So after that, they felt pretty confident that the mitigation was complete, but they wanted to leave the sensors on our network for another month or two, which they did, and they didn't see anything on our network. And then with that, we sort of had a list of longer term um, goals for our company to achieve, which you can see here, which we were actually scheduled to replace the firewalls anyway that same year. So we had already budgeted for that cost, and that was really the only cost that we accounted for during this entire mitigation. Um, we had implemented MFA for all of our accounts, including on VPN, which we already had MFA on our Microsoft Office 365 accounts, but nothing on VPN, which we'd been asking our managed service provider for a few years. Our MSP was able to close out a few open projects, which included a domain sort of full changeover. Um, and that project being open for so long definitely left us vulnerable as well. And then another big one, we were able to install a password manager for all of our users, which we didn't have before. And we actually found out through CISA that a lot of our user credentials obviously had been taken, but a lot of our employees had personal personal information taken as well. So they had whatever Google Chrome, logged in with their users, and any password saves in their internet browser, internet cache was taken. So we had to there was like a list of maybe like 10 users that we had to let them know that they had to change all of their personal passwords as well. And then, now our policy is don't cache any passwords in Chrome. Don't even sign into your own personal accounts in Chrome, and completely utilize our own company-wide password manager. So this is just a look at sort of the timeline. So from the day of the Fortinet vulnerability disclosure, that was December 12th, and then we made it about a year working through the process to mitigation. Here's just a portrayal of how they likely compromised our system, sort of starting with basically password cracking. Once they found you know the vulnerability still live on our system, then they're able to just crack our password with brute force. And our network infrastructure at the time was very flat. Um, I'll get to that slide right now, actually. So our infrastructure was very flat at the time. So basically, the way our MSP had it set up, an admin password would work for any high level security clearance that was needed to create a user to um, log into either our electric SCADA network, our water SCADA network. They had the same password for everything, same password, same user. So now that's not completely like that. Now we have different levels of of users with different accessibility, and everything now is completely segmented. Our file server, before we just had one shared drive that was accessible to our electric employees and our water employees. And now we have a shared drive for every single different department in our company. So between our water operations to our electric operations, facilities, administration, everything's a different shared drive, uh, and access is completely clamped down to only the users that actually need it. So there's just a lot more care on our system nowadays. Um, Let me go back one slide here as well. So what China was trying to do, basically CISA told us that they wanted to gather as much intelligence as they could in the U.S. They they wanted that for the Taiwan conflict, so they could pre-position themselves with sort of a leg up on the United States. They wanted to just basically this last bullet, get inside, stay hidden, and gain leverage. So they wanted to strike fear into our nation essentially with these attacks, and be able to utilize the information that they took whenever they felt necessary. So um, they ended up taking some information from us that was like old operational information. So we had, some retired users had documents called, something. If SCADA was in the name of a document, even if it was old, China took that. Luckily, they didn't take any of our customer information. All of our customer information is lives on the cloud outside of our network, so we didn't have to worry about telling any of our customers about it right away. Luckily, because they really didn't take anything like that. They sort of just took things off of our file server that they thought was uh, beneficial, or might be might be strategically used in the future. So we were lucky in that sense. And our board of commissioners, they oversee the light and water department. It's a 5-member board. So obviously we kept them apprised of the situation completely. But really, other than that, there wasn't many people that we let in, just because the FBI and CISA told us to keep it as quiet as possible. So that was sort of what we were going off of. We really didn't want to give China any red flags. We did tell a few of the town of Littleton, higher management, members of the select board, things like that, just really need to know basis. But we did get a lot of criticism for that later on, once we ended up sharing all of this. So skip forward to our next slide. So lessons learned here. Um, so after the mitigations were complete, like I said, CISA had a list of things for us to complete long term. One of the other things that they allowed us to do was utilize their risk and vulnerability assessment, which was essentially another CISA team that would sit on our network. It was essentially a penetration test. So they would sit on our network for 2 weeks and just try and exploit everything they could. So after we made the mitigations, they sort of doubled down and said, "Hey, let's test these out." So CISA spent a week remotely just trying to hack into our network and get different places. And then they actually came the second week on site to do the same thing. And once they hit enough roadblocks and they said, "Hey, you guys did great here. We really can't get to that next level. Can you guys let us into that next level?" And then we can see what we can exploit there. So working with them hand in hand, and we got a nice report after that with a few other mitigation strategies or tips or tasks for us to do. So that was great. Um, they, they also they also do a sort of a cyber hygiene assessment for us, and I think that's free to sign up
Hey
for.
Dave, your microphone is added again.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Like I said, it happens. And while he's doing that, I'll just remind everyone to put your questions in the Q&A. Um, it should be at the bottom of your screen.
Is that any better, Gina?
That sounds better to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, with that being said, there's a lot more to be shared. So I would like to jump into the Q&A here. And I can unshare my screen here.
Okay, so thank you so much. I am stunned with what you went through, and I'm sure others are as well. Um, One of the questions that has come through is, and you started to sort of address this, is that so was there ever any real threat to your community? And sort of at the same in the same time, can you tell us more about the reaction once it did come out? You mentioned that there was some criticism. So, yeah.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. So yeah, there was a real threat, like I said. The way our network was set up was just it was not as secure as we thought. So if they really had an intention of doing physical damage or causing public health crisis, they could have. So um, the one example that we like to give. So obviously all of our water treatment plants are operated. We have operators, but we have 24/7, SCADA systems that monitor and control uh, all of our treatment systems. So they could have accessed that part of our network, and if they knew what they were doing, they could have taken set points, alarm set points, and adjusted them to a point that would be harmful, and administered different chemicals into the water that we typically do at one level, and that if they ramped it up a certain level, we wouldn't have caught right away if they were savvy enough with our SCADA software and things like that. So that was the point of once we figured that out, everyone was on the same page with trying to move on and make the mitigations. And then the second part of that question, yeah, we did receive criticism, not much, but some local criticism from people that were upset that we didn't disclose this to our customer base while it was happening. Um, and to that, I mean, it was an easy answer from my standpoint to say, well, hey, this was an active, an active, not crime, but just an active scene of, we had to follow the lead of FBI and CISA. And even once we did decide to share, I believe at that point we were still like, okay, if we do share this, like we're in a position where luckily no one got hurt. Um, yes, we might face some local criticism, and we might put a target on our back for the future for anyone else. So we did get some ramped up like phishing emails and things like that of people just trying to test us again. And then we actually did have one person locally who ran for our board on the premise of us not being transparent throughout this scenario, and how he himself could have provided us help that the FBI and CISA couldn't have. And we have resources in town that could have helped us. And so that luckily that didn't go anywhere, and it just kind of became noise. But for the most part, it was a positive reaction from our
Yeah,
customers.
that's good. So, there is one question, and then there's one person that has their hand raised. And I can open up the microphone in just a second to let that person. It looks like they took their hand down. Okay, so we have one question here that's just come through. So the question is, Dragos did not detect the Volt Typhoon when initially deployed and commissioned? Question mark. And then it goes on. Didn't the OT Watch do a full-scale threat hunt at the time of deployment where they would have found Volt Typhoon?
Yeah, so they did. So, like I said, yeah, the way their sensors worked, they did not detect anything on our system because when they were installed. Either there was no direct activity that day, or they thought it was normal activity. Um, right after, and I should have mentioned this, right after we were alerted by the FBI of this happening, we reached out to Dragos and said, "Hey, can you help with this?" And they again gave us another threat hunting team, and they were very familiar. They had other customers going through this issue at the same time, so they were able to do that full threat hunt at that time and provide us with information that we were able to get back to the CISA threat hunt team. So they sort of worked hand in hand in that effort. So we were definitely glad that they were on board. But the timeline, like I said, it was like the sort of the end of August when um, they were officially started on our network, and then maybe like a month and a half to 2 months later is sort of the timeline there. So
Great. So another question about training I mean, there was although this really stemmed from like you say, the dropped ball by your service provider. There was a component to this where, employee information was hacked and taken, and certainly, it's always a great practice to have tight controls there. I would imagine, as this person mentions, that your employees who were there during this time, of course, they didn't know at the time, but who experienced this, right, are, made a pretty strong impression. But what about new employees? What do you do? How do you incorporate this experience into your training with them?
yeah, definitely. So yeah, now I mean we have a lot of new processes and procedures that weren't in place before. Um, so part of our onboarding process with new employees now is explain to them our network and how it's set up. They get enrolled into this training. Um, so we sort of that's new, and then we also we have not terms and conditions, but like a policy, an IT policy that gets shared with them that they have to sign off on. So we do make a few new efforts in that sense on the onboarding side.
Okay, great. Um, do we have any further questions? Leave it open for just a minute and make sure that we have um, quenched that appetite for other questions. Um, here's one. Did China find you were typhoon vulnerable, then try to find an account to crack the password? Not sure on how these are correlated.
Say that again.
Okay, so the question says, did China find you were typhoon vulnerable, then try to find an account to crack the password? Not sure on how these are correlated.
Yes, they did. So once they were in our network, that's how they utilized the VPN to move around on our network. So that's how the password was correlated,
Okay.
the password cracking.
Okay. We've got another question. Do you adhere to a cybersecurity framework?
Yes. So on well, that's sort of a different question to answer for us since we're combined with electric and water. So for whatever reason, we've noticed on the electric side that frameworks and things that we have to adhere to are a little further ahead than the water industry. So we sort of follow the electric side on that. So there's a lot of things that are regulated under FERC and NERC that we utilize. We've come across the MITRE framework. I think SIST has one. So there's a couple different things that we pull from, but mainly we follow the electric regulations.
Okay. Are there any further questions that we can answer for anyone today? Um, I will mention again that there is a nice collection of resources at the in the resource section of this presentation. Hopefully, you've been able to find that. And I will remind you to take a look at the Summit website and at being a member of ARWO with your with a 3 month trial membership that actually covers the Summit. So you would go as a member to the Summit if you signed up today for any of our non-members who are out there. Um, all right, I have one more question before we say goodbye. How did they know which account to crack, or were they just doing a Hail Mary?
That's a good question, and I don't necessarily know how they did it, but I believe it's sort of like a Hail Mary. I think they have tools that they can crack whatever hashes that they need to figure out the password. I'm not sure how they got the account associated.
Okay, fascinating. I just can't believe this happened. And yet I know it's a huge risk. This is one of the topics that we follow pretty heavily at ARWO. And like I said at the beginning of this, it's just everyone's worst nightmare what's happened to you. So, again, thank you for your generosity of sharing this information. And we will be posting the replay of this webinar probably later today on the ARWO website. And I want to thank everyone who's attended. Um, and with that, I am going to bring this to an end, and we will see you all next time.